Tammy. And first, I'd like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to be here tonight to share our story. Before we get too far in, though, if we could, can we get another round of applause for Emily, please? Emily has done an incredible job of putting this entire event together, and she really is the reason that we're here tonight, despite all the times we told her there was absolutely no way we were comfortable doing this. The truth is, I am a practicing lawyer, like she said, my wife is a corporate accountant. We have never done anything like this before. We've certainly never gotten in front of a group of people like this and just talked about ourselves. So, if this goes horribly wrong, like we think it will, just like remember this was Emily's idea. You've already clapped for it, so. But honestly, ever since we heard about this event, there have been so many little signs that have just kept popping up in our life, just signs that we're supposed to be here tonight. So many little things just pushing us in this direction. And if we've learned anything over the last several years, it's that if you keep your eyes open and your heart open to the signs that God sends, you realize He really is all around us, and He really does have a plan for us. And there was one moment in particular that stood out to us as being the biggest sign of all that we were supposed to do this tonight. And it was the second that Emily told us that the message for this year's event. This one? First mistake. I told you to go one way wrong. The biggest sign was the message for this year's event. The gospel is life, and that life is always good news. As soon as we heard that, we just kind of laughed because we knew it was a sign. See, that message, good news, life is always good news. That's kind of been our family motto over the last several years. It's kind of been our guiding star through all the events we're going to talk about tonight. So believe me when I say it's no coincidence that we're here tonight, even if it's just to share our story with one person. And let me also just say, if you're not that one person and you do find this incredibly boring, I would just like to remind you this was Emily's idea. So, like Emily mentioned, my wife and I have been married for 16 years, and you already know, high school sweethearts. We started our family with our daughter, Victoria. And we had some trouble getting pregnant early on, but with a little bit of help and a lot of prayers, everything went really well. And now Victoria is 12, almost 13, and she is absolutely awesome. She likes to make it funky. And a few years after we had her, we started to talk about having more kids, not just for us, but for Victoria too. And so we tried, but it just didn't happen. And for several years, after several years, the doctors finally told us it just wasn't in the cards, not really for either one of us. So for a long time, we didn't do anything about it. And then God decided to show up in our lives in a really big way, and He sent us a sign that He had something in mind for us. Something that was definitely 100% His plan and not ours. We were at an event with Tammy's family, and we probably weren't there very long, and if I know me, I was probably already asking to leave. And Tammy's sister, who works in child placement in the foster care system, she starts telling us about all these kids and all these really sad stories. And she's telling us about this great need for foster parents. So we're listening to this, and I just asked, why don't more people foster? And she says, well, the truth is, a lot of people are just intimidated by the system because they don't know how it works. Or they're scared to go to court, and foster care requires a lot of court dates. Or they want to do it, but they just don't have the time or the resources. And so we're just kind of listening to this, and we're kind of looking at each other, kind of thinking the same thing. That's not really true. Tammy was thinking, we should totally do this. I was thinking, someone else should totally do this. But the truth was, I couldn't ignore the signs. We weren't intimidated by the system. We knew somebody in it. Tammy's sister could hold our hand through the whole process. Not scared of court. I love court. I'm a lawyer. As far as time and resources, we both have good jobs. Both of our jobs are really flexible. We had an extra bedroom. And I wasn't not into the idea of fostering, so we decided to do it. We became foster parents. And we took our one extra bedroom and our one extra bed and our one extra car seat, and we signed up to foster. And on Valentine's Day, 2014, the state of Louisiana did exactly what you would expect them to do. They completely ignored every single thing we told them, and they gave us 2 kids. And by the way, just as a side note, I don't know if you know how the foster system works, and I'm sure it's not always this way, but in our experience, the way it works is the state of Louisiana will meet you in an empty parking lot, and they will hand you a baby, and then they will walk away. That's the whole transaction. That's it. No middle names, no social security numbers, no list of allergies, not even a receipt. Food trucks give receipts. The state of Louisiana just gives you a child. Or in our case, 2. Should have practiced with the button. So like that, we became a family of 5. And it was awesome. For the next 15 months, the boys were our lives. Doctor appointments, dentist appointments, court dates, finding a daycare that would take Medicaid, because that's what the system requires, more court dates, LSU games, potty training, more court dates. And the whole time, while these 2 incredible little boys were becoming a very real part of our family, we knew they had a loving family of their own, family that was fighting to get them back. So we knew that one day they'd be golden. So God did his thing. Through these 2 amazing little boys, God taught us about unconditional love and about acceptance, and he taught us about loss. He prepared our hearts, he prepared our minds for what was coming. We would lose them. They wouldn't always be with us, and we couldn't always protect them. But for those 15 months, and even through today, the boys were very much the answer to our prayers. And then God decided to answer another prayer.
So about 3 weeks before the boys were to leave us and go back to their family, our hearts were broken, all of our hearts. And I would wake up morning after morning and just feel so nauseous, and my head would spin. And after about a week of feeling this way, it hit me. I'd felt this way before, about 9 years earlier. So I was at home and I ran to the bathroom, and right there, with nobody else in the house, I looked down and there it was. I was pregnant. And I was completely shocked. I had been preparing for a month to let go of the boys, and I hadn't thought about having another child of my own in years. So needless to say, we were extremely excited, and we were so happy, and it felt like God was rewarding us for everything that we had done over the last 15 months with the boys. And as my pregnancy went on, everything was going really well, and I felt great. So Wayne and I decided to bring Victoria with us to the ultrasound, because we knew she would be excited to see her little brother and little sister. But as we gathered around and we saw our sweet baby's heartbeat light up the screen, I could sense that something wasn't quite right. And nothing was said, and Wayne and Victoria were unaware. Even our ultrasound tech did her best to hide it, but I knew in my heart that something was wrong. So the tech scanned me for almost an hour, which felt like a really long time, and she kept measuring and rechecking measurements. And when we left the room to go to our doctor appointment to see our doctor, I turned and I told Wayne to take Victoria home. I knew that something was coming. I didn't know what it was, but I didn't want Victoria to be there. So we actually took this picture right before Wayne and Victoria left. And so I went to my doctor's office, and as I sat across from her, I found out that our baby had a cyst on its brain and some significant heart issues. And so my doctor tried to encourage me and tell me, not to worry just yet. We still had, lots of tests to do and scans to be done, but I knew that our baby was really sick in that moment, and I was completely devastated. And it just felt like this reward that God had given us was just suddenly being taken away from us. So within a few days, we found out that we were having a boy, a son, and we were given a diagnosis. Our baby had an extra copy of the 18th chromosome, or trisomy 18, which is really similar to Down syndrome, but it's much more serious and much more life-threatening. And we were told that the chances of him making it to delivery was very low, and if he did make it to delivery, that he wouldn't likely live for very long after. But we were really lucky because we had incredible doctors and nurses. One of our nurses is here with us right now, part of our family now, but we had incredible doctors and nurses and specialists and our family that shared our belief, and that was that no matter the diagnosis, life is always good news. But they did have to do their job. So at 24 weeks, when I was there in the exam room and we got his diagnosis, we were told that we had the option to terminate our pregnancy. We could let our son go. Our baby, who was kicking and rolling and had this perfect heartbeat, because his diagnosis was considered incompatible with life. And that same week, I could choose to go into the hospital and I could be induced, but nothing would be done to save his life. We could spend time with him until he passed away, but then that would be it. And words are inadequate, but I was shocked, and I felt very helpless at the time, and I just couldn't imagine then and even now another family feeling the way that I did in that moment, and facing the same decision and thinking that they might not have the same support that we had in our doctors and our nurses and our specialists, or they might not have the same belief that life is precious and there's always something good to come from it. So for Wayne and I, termination was absolutely not an option. So over the next few days, as we kind of worked to process everything, and we took a little trip, we named our son Julian, and we worked to kind of get through all, everything that we had to think about. And as much as we talked and we thought about it and we Googled and we prayed, it always came back to one thing, and the conversation always ended with, we loved our son for exactly who he was, and he had already changed us so much, and it didn't matter how long or how short his life was. We didn't know, and so we made a decision that we would celebrate his life. So we started with trips around Baton Rouge, went and had our favorite snowballs and visited our church and went to his sister's school. We took Julian to New Orleans and went to have the best beignets at Cafe Du Monde, and went to Port au Col for a burger. We went tailgating, lots of tailgating at LSU that season. Julian got to meet both Mike the Tigers. We played with Daddy's favorite toys, fashion toys, and listened to all his favorite music. We took Julian on trips to Arkansas and a couple different trips to the beach, because those were our favorite things, and we wanted to make sure that he got to experience those things with us. He got to play with his brothers and his sister. And when Julian was 200 days old, we had a birthday party for him, and we had cake and we had presents, and just really tried to celebrate him. And we had another party when he was 250 days old. And then in July, we gathered with our friends, and we had a Thanksgiving feast. We wanted to enjoy the holidays, and so in August, we put our Christmas tree up with crazy people, and we got presents, and Santa stopped by that night, and we woke up the next morning, and we celebrated Christmas with him, because I was due in October, and we knew that we might not have Christmas with him. So with every day that passed, Julian was beating the odds, and he was surviving, and he was actually doing really well. But before we knew it, I was full term, and we had handpicked the absolute best medical team that we could, and delivery day came. And on October 5th, 2015, Julian Reed Pearl was born. He was 3 pounds, 13 ounces, and he was absolutely perfect in every way. And Julian continued to beat the odds. And we continued to celebrate him because we knew how special he was. When we were in the hospital, we had birthday parties every single day at 1:07 p.m., exactly when he was born. And we dressed him up to cheer the Tigers on for football. And Julian managed to stay out of the NICU. He took his bottles like a champ. He passed his car seat test. I remember Amy doing his car seat test. And to everyone's surprise, when Julian was just 6 days old, he came home with us. And it was in that moment, as we pulled into the driveway, that we saw the Welcome Home Julian sign, and we just knew that we were given the greatest gift that we could have ever dreamed of, to bring our son home that day. And we held Julian every moment of every day. We even changed his diapers on our laps. We didn't want to put him down. We sang to him, and we read so many books. We dressed him up. And we celebrated every single milestone. It didn't matter how small. I remember so well taking a picture of a sink full of those little creamy NICU bottles, because it was such a big moment, and it was something that I didn't let myself think about when I was pregnant, because I knew the chances of him coming home and taking bottles, the chances were very low of that. So it was just the greatest feeling in the world. I remember I took a picture and I sent it to Wayne. But Julian slept in our bed on my chest every single night. And for Julian's entire 33 days of life, he was our world. We never once stopped appreciating this tiny miracle that we were given. And Julian knew what it meant to be fiercely loved and deeply cherished and wildly celebrated. And even after Julian left us, we never stopped celebrating his life. When we went to Disney World, we brought Disney back to him. And when we cheered on the Tigers, we made sure to cheer on with Julian. Whenever the best kids movie at the theater was, Julian had all the greatest toys to go with it. We never miss a holiday, ever. We celebrate Mardi Gras and Easter, and when we had snowfall a year or two ago, we drove through the snow to Julian and we made a snowman with him. And every year for his birthday, we spend the day with him, and we have visitors come, and we have cake, and we have presents, and we just do all the things that you want to do with your kid. And the entire time that we were celebrating Julian's life, we just kept getting these signs that he was still with us and God was still with us. And it started actually the day after he passed away. I looked out of our dining room window. I remember I had a cup of coffee and I looked out and a beautiful blue jay landed on the driveway right in front of me. Now, we had been at our house for probably, 8 or 9 years. I had never once seen a blue jay at our house. So he landed right in front of me, and I remember looking at Wayne, and I said, look, Julian stopped by to say hi. And he kind of just smiled. And then a few days later, after his funeral, we were driving to visit him, and another blue jay flew directly in front of our car. And we just looked at each other, and without saying a word, it just became our thing, and it was our sign. And we have felt God's presence, and we have felt Julian's presence and his love everywhere since then. And so Valentine's
So I have
Day.
to interrupt here because Tammy wasn't going to mention this, but we can't talk about this Blue Jay thing and not talk about what happened on Mother's Day that year. If you want to know just how much Julian was still a part of our life and this whole Blue Jay thing, all you have to know is about Mother's Day that year. By that time, the Blue Jay thing was just ongoing in our lives, and it was just known. So Victoria and I decided for Mother's Day, we would get Tammy this cute little Blue Jay charm. We found this poem about Blue Jays online, and this was Tammy's gift from Julian for Mother's Day. And you see it says there, I can't. This merry little feathered friend, so cheery, bright, and blue, because he brings true happiness, I'm sending him to you. And it was perfect, and Tammy cried, and I cried, and we all cried, and she loved it. And the next morning, I wake up, and Tammy comes up to me and says, I think I hear something in the bathroom. I think I hear something knocking on the window. And I go in there, and sure enough, what do I see? This guy, trying to get into our house day after Mother's Day. And when I say this guy wouldn't leave us, I'm not kidding. He wanted to take pictures with us. He wanted me to hold him. And even after I put him back in his nest, he started flying around our house, trying to find a way in. And the whole time, Tammy's just like, this is incredible, this is a sign from God. And I'm like, if I wake up tomorrow and there's a blue jay in our house, I'm going to be so upset. Sorry for your saying.
It's true. I can name 200 instances of blue jays in the last 4 years. So, a few months after Julia passed away, Valentine's Day came around, and Wayne and I left the house to go get some coffee. And as I walked to the car, this tiny little feather floated in front of me. And I remember I scooped it up and I put it in my pocket. And we got to the coffee shop, and as I sat down, a second tiny little feather floated down and landed on the table right in front of my coffee cup. I actually took a picture of it. And I held it in my hand, and the whole way home, I just kept thinking about these two feathers. So when Wayne dropped me off at home, nobody else was there, and I knew I was torturing myself, but I ran to the bathroom, and I grabbed a test, and I fell to my knees. When I looked down, and I saw it, God had sent us another baby, 2 babies in less than a year, and it was shocking. And this time around, everything was very different. It had only been a couple months since we lost Julian, so we didn't want to tell anyone right away because we were so nervous, and we went to so many doctor appointments. I remember sneaking in after hours just for a quick peek and to listen to the heartbeat and make sure that everything was okay because we were so nervous this time. So we decided to go ahead and do the same test that we had done with Julian, just for peace of mind that this baby was okay. And I was at work when my phone rang, and I saw it was the doctor's office. And so I answered it, and when I did, my heart sank. So anytime I'd gotten a call up to this point, it was always the nurse who would call and tell me, the results of whatever it was I had done was good. But this time it was my doctor on the other end of the line. And I'll never forget, she said, "Tammy, it's Down syndrome." And in that moment, as I was opening the door to go outside and catch my breath, every single ounce of fear disappeared. It was gone. Our baby was okay, and we could do Down syndrome. There had been so many times in my previous pregnancy that we had both prayed that maybe Julian's test was just a little off, and maybe he had Down syndrome and not trisomy 18 because they were both so similar, yet the outcomes were so different. And now here we were. God had answered our prayer. And so on October 7th, 2016, almost a year exactly to the day after Julian was born, we welcomed our sweet and perfect Evangeline Love. She was 7 pounds, 13 ounces, mostly in her cheeks. She had the most adorable almond-shaped little eyes you've ever seen. And Evangeline was born perfectly healthy. So, just last week, we celebrated her 3rd birthday. And over the last 3 years, she has exceeded all of our expectations. She's reaching developmental milestones faster than we can set them. She is in a daycare class with typical children. Her communication is right on track, combining sign language and words, and she does gymnastics. She's been in a few magazines, recently named cover kid for Baton Rouge Parents Magazine. But best of all, it's not her accomplishments that make us the most proud to be her parents. It's who Evie is as a person. She lights up the room when she walks in. Everywhere we go, doesn't matter where we are around Baton Rouge, people gravitate toward her, adults and children. Her smile is contagious, and because of her and because of Julian, we've been forced to really slow down and enjoy every day. And Evie has helped to heal our hearts, and she just brings so much joy and light and positivity back into our lives. And she's exactly who God knew that we needed.
But despite how amazing she is, the truth is, for every 1 child born in the U.S. with Down syndrome, 2 are terminated. And the numbers in other countries are much worse, with some countries boasting a 100% termination rate. 100% in the entire country. That's the world we live in. That's the world our daughter lives in. So, we just kept thinking, maybe part of the problem is that most people don't know anyone with Down syndrome. Or what they think they know, they learn from Google or some outdated brochure. And we get it. Before Evie, we had never met anyone with Down syndrome. We didn't know what to expect. So we did what everybody does. We went to Google and Instagram and Facebook, just looking for answers, looking for hope, hoping to find families like us, families that live that message, that life is always good news. And honestly, at least for us, 3 years ago, we just couldn't find exactly what we were looking for. So that's when we decided that if we couldn't find it, we'd make it. So we started a page, The Extraordinary Evangeline Love, or Extra Evie Love on Instagram. And the whole idea was we just show what it was like to raise an awesome little girl in South Louisiana. A little girl that just happens to have Down syndrome. And celebrate every second of her life and every little milestone, no matter what it was. And that was it. And maybe if enough people saw that squishy little face enough times, maybe they'd fall in love with it. And maybe they'd start to think differently about Down syndrome because they knew someone with it. And her name is Evangeline Love. And she is absolutely awesome. Right? And pretty quickly, to our surprise, or maybe not surprising given that picture, we got 100 followers. And then that face got us 1,000 followers. And then 10,000 followers. And before we knew it, we turned around, and little Evie Love had 25,000 followers. Which is funny, by the way, because now when people ask us what's the hardest part about raising a child with Down syndrome, we have to tell them managing our Instagram account. That's the hardest part. But it worked. The truth is, we get messages all the time now from parents who just got a diagnosis, whether it's Down syndrome or trisomy 18 like Julian, and all they want to know is that they're not alone. They just want to know if it'll be okay. And we always tell them the exact same thing. It'll be better than okay. It'll be amazing. And just quickly, because I know Emily probably thinks we're taking up way too much of your time, I will say this silly site continues to be a place in our lives where signs just keep popping up about what we're to do next. Whether it's helping a special needs charity or fundraising for a local child going through open heart surgery, or some of you may know about Anna's Grace. There's Monica Alley. Some of you may know about Anna's Grace. Anna's Grace is an incredible organization here in Baton Rouge that helps with end-of-life expenses for Baton Rouge area babies that have passed away. I'd like to do work with Anna's Grace every year, every chance we get, honestly. And it was also through social media that we started to hear about children with disabilities, whether it was autism or Down syndrome, who were being discriminated against in the organ transplant process. And through Evie's silly little page, we were able to get a group of people together to not only draft a non-discrimination bill for Louisiana, but gain so much support for it that within almost 3 months to the day of having the bill drafted, we were meeting the governor to get it signed into law. And now we are currently working with over a dozen people in other states to get similar laws passed where they are. And it just seems like every time we turn around, every time we think we're done, God just seems to send us another sign that He has other plans. Kind of like what Emily told us about tonight. At first, we didn't think this was for us. But then she told us about the message for tonight. The gospel is life, and life is always good news. The moment we saw that, we just had to laugh, because we knew it was a sign. And here's why. Thank y'all.
But I met Wayne at an Anna's Grace event, and I said, like, hey, I'm a fan of Evie, and I'm a super fan of her page, I'm just saying. But I remember talking to him, and he said exactly, we didn't know anybody before Evie. And so when I was choosing this theme, he saw it was very good. I went right back to that moment with Wayne. I could tell you, like, we were looking at the stage, Evie had a tutu, and I said, man, he saw that it was very good. The hate are going to speak, and then they denied me to speak to their students. And I was like, Lord, I know. And so
so I typed out that email like at lunch duty. I mean, no, I was paying attention to student Bisley. But I was like, oh, please, Lord, and then they said yes, and then I didn't even know their last name, which is Pearl. And if you know anything about Margaret Costello, she's the patron of those with disabilities. Her name means Pearl. She was abandoned by her parents and locked away, and you were just the antithesis of that. But she would always say, and I had a student last year who shared this with me, that if only you could see what's in my heart, if only you could see what's in my heart. And when she died, and they actually opened her heart, they found 3 pearls in her heart. And I was like, your daughter's entire name it screams good news, and you all do that. Like, we are supposed to use every means necessary to proclaim that the gospel is life, and Tammy and Wayne are just ill in that. Give it up!